Okay, so light roast. I'm actually pretty excited about today's episode. I mean, I'm usually excited about the episodes, but I think this one in particular I am because what I decided to do this time is to focus a little less on the person and
Mhm.
just kind of compile like something quick that I feel is very applicable to myself and probably homework that I will be giving myself for the week.
Mm.
So it's also, one of those things like it's not something that I just make up or stuff that it's like, hey, people in the world, whoever's listening to us, like you do it, but we won't apply it. It's
Yeah.
we want to be as again, I use this word a lot because I think it's true to it, like as authentic as we can be. Um,
Mhm.
so you know how, and I've also mentioned this quite a few times, how I've always talked about like sometimes I feel like I've lived under a rock because when I realize that there are certain things that I didn't know or that I heard of, but I never really made the intention to like actually try to find out what these things are. And
Yeah.
I do, and then I'm just like so mind blown and just like, wow. Okay, so something that you'll catch on quickly is I always go off of quotes because, again, this is stuff that somebody famous or whatever person I'm focusing on has said. And there's a reason why you say things, right? It's like going back to our podcast and just taking a quote and saying, like it gives you a glimpse of that person. So I'm very big on quotes. I love capturing them and then deciding who I'm going to talk about. Um, and again, like I said, I'm not necessarily going to talk about this person a lot because I think that like I almost want to challenge the world to like you do your research on this person. It's
Okay.
because there's so much. um I think you've read his book, so you may already know like more than what I could possibly explain. But the person that I pulled this quote from was C.S. Lewis.
Mm. Okay.
So like I said, I've always been a like quotes person. And I remember I actually have like a quotes book, and I remember filling it in with a bunch of his quotes, not knowing who he was. Like it's like, oh, that's great. Oh, that's great, and I would write it down. And then as I was preparing for this, he kept coming up, and I was like, you know what? I should probably just settle this like once and for all. I need to find out who this man is. And sure enough, I started looking, researching. And by doing so, you discover like it just kind of opens a can of like worms, and you just
Yeah.
so that's why I'm saying like I don't think I would do it justice considering that I'm so new to his life and who he is. Um,
Mhm.
that I think like everyone should be able to just look him up, check him out. One of the things I will say that inspired me a lot about him is in his timeline he published so many books that I would consider back to back. you know I think now authors will take about a year like to write, but
Mhm.
now they're very big on like marketing and making sure that it's a big deal. I mean, which it is, but just to kind
Yeah.
of promote it. And obviously, being a writer from back then, it was about the content, right? It was
Mhm.
about and he did. He's just being, I know he had great works of literature, and then to have been able to publish them at just like a year after a year, especially
Yeah.
again, if you're listening and you're like, okay, I just heard his name, but I don't know who he is. He's famously known for the being the author of the I haven't read the book, so what is it? Is it the advent? It's not the Adventures. It's from Narnia. What is it? What is the
The Chronicles of Narnia.
Chronicles? Okay, I was like, I know it's not adventure. It's this other one. Yeah. Which I've heard are actually really good. I haven't read them myself, but
Yeah, me either.
I've been told by, people who have that
Mhm.
they recommend the books. So I'm also tempted. It's funny we were talking about books earlier because I'm
Yeah.
just kind of like do a binge of the books, which is obviously longer than a show, or like when you want to binge a show. Um but yeah, I just his story is very interesting. He's also greatly known for his faith, and just again, he has books on that as well. I did watch, like how people. like historians will talk about, great men in I guess literature or the world or whatever. And one
Yeah.
of the things that they talked about is he was really good about writing for everyone,
Mhm.
not just writing for like philosophers or writing for like scholars. That's the word I was looking for. For writing for scholars. He knew how to write to the public, to everyone.
Yeah.
So all that to say, the quote that I grabbed from him was, "You are never too old to set another goal or to dream a new dream." And the reason why it's very applicable now is because, and I haven't posted it yet, but when I do post the episode where we talked about, kind of shifting gears career wise or hobbies and stuff like that,
Mhm.
um, it's very important to take note of that, because I know that, people's lives change and priorities shift. But I think sometimes we get into this mentality that, like, we create the norm that
Mhm.
you are to build your life at your 20s, or to discover yourself at your 20s, and to really go all out, and then by your 30s, work hard, move up. And there's just like this set of, like, I guess, expectations that
Yeah.
somehow, like, if you end up falling into your 40s or your 50s and you're in a place where maybe you find a new passion or new opportunities open up, I feel like sometimes there's that fear of maybe not wanting to go for it because of feeling too old, or
Mhm.
feeling like, oh, I should have taken advantage of this when I was 20. So that's one of the reasons why, like, it really stood out to me. Obviously, I'm not, I guess, what you would consider old, right? But it's also, you that word depends on, like, I guess, where you're at in life and how you
Yeah.
take that. And right before we started recording, or before I called you, one of the things that also came to mind is this quote can actually be switched, right? You're also, and I think you're never too young,
Mhm.
because I know that again, it's this society norm of, um, you have to be a certain age to then be approved by society that you do know what you want.
Yeah.
And that's really tough, because honestly, like, we're all going through different journeys in our life. We're all different people. And so it's so, in a sense, unfair to just look at somebody, and I'm talking about, like, not even knowing them or knowing anything about them, to look at somebody, judge them by their age, and determine that they're not mature enough, or that they have no idea what they want, or kind of like setting that kind of like, oh, you're not there yet. And then vice
Mhm.
versa, being at a certain age and like, really, you're gonna do that now. And so, again, like, it's a it's applicable to me, but it's also like to the world, like, wherever you're at. Like, if you find a new passion, if you find that your career shifts, if you find that family matters change, or that your priorities change, like, again, there should be no age limit to the direction you want to go, as far as the goals that you set for yourself, for your family, or the dreams that you have. um
Mhm.
so I kind of looked up different ways to determine that, um because obviously, if you're like me, again, when you watch the episode, you'll know that I was at kind of like at a loss a little bit, um
Yeah.
so one of the things I looked up is, there's something very famously is SMART goals. um Not just because they're smart, right, but it's actually an acronym. And it stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So I know I said that really fast, but it's a way that, like, a lot of companies or businesses will approach having goals, right? Because you want to be
Mhm.
able to make sure that you're specific with your goals, because it's easy to say, um for example, because we've talked about fitness and all that, like, I want to lose weight. Well,
Yeah.
it's a good goal, but you need to be specific. How much weight do you want to lose, right? The more specific you are, the more in tune you will be to make sure that you can actually check the goal. And then the next one is measurable, right? You have to be able to measure. Like I said, how do you get to check it? Like, what makes that goal checkable? What makes it you reach that level of success? Then there's achievable, which kind of ties in as well, right? Can it be achieved? Let's be realistic. Can it be achieved? If, let's say, you're trying to, again, with the fitness, because first thing that came to mind, let's say you say, I want to lose 100 pounds in a week. Is that achievable, right? You don't want to set yourself up to this expectation of, and I'm not saying like on the negative side, it's kind of like, okay, we as positive people have to meet people who are on the negative side. When you meet, there's that realistic line, right? So being negative to being realistic, and then being positive to being unrealistic, right? So there's that in between. So something that's achievable, and then relevant, right? I mean, of course, if it's about yourself, then I would think it's relevant. And time bound, right? What's your time period? Because, and I think this is the one that a lot of people, and I'm including myself, you, like in the beginning of the year, I talked about this already about setting goals and stuff, but some of my goals, I didn't give myself like necessarily like a time period. Some of them in my mind for the year, you know, so that was mine. But there are other ones that I wrote on there, and it was kind of like, yeah, I want to achieve it. But I, by no means did I give myself like a time frame or anything. And sometimes that helps, right? Because it helps you reach your limit or your time restriction or whatever, and then reevaluate. Okay, well, where am I now? So approaching that way, if you've heard of it before, SMART goals is one way to approach, you know, coming up with a new goal, or being able to write it and then, you know, create yourself into that path of achieving your new goals. Another one is actually vision boards. I've heard so much about it, and I've really wanted to create my own vision board. I just feel like I would overwhelm myself with everything I would want to add on there. Like pictures and stuff like that, which can be done differently. I don't know if you've ever created a vision board before.
No, I'm not. I don't know. Just that doesn't work for me. Or just write it down.
Oh, right. Okay. And that's one way. So the SMART goals is a written version. A vision board is exactly what it is. Like, it's pictures, it's drawings. I mean, it's words as well. But if anything, it has like a visual effect. So it's more like keep your eye on the prize kind of idea of like what you envision your life to be. Another way would be like brainstorming methods, right? So just think of it as one of those essays you had to write in school, right? But in this case, it's your life, and it's a goal or a dream that you want to achieve. Just think way back to when you had to do those mind maps and those little spider webs. And, you know, it's a way to kind of get your creative juices in your mind. Just kind of start with the center and just branch out, and then branch out again and make it a little tree. So that's another way of kind of like putting yourself and trying to expand. Again, the idea is not to like have the right answer like this, right? The idea is just to be able to figure yourself out, right? Again, if you have your life figured out, I mean, I applaud you. But this, I mean, at some point in life, you're going to get thrown in several ways where you have to kind of reevaluate, like, am I where I need to, or did I lose my way? And that's kind of, funny enough, leads me to like creating a roadmap, kind of keeping yourself on track and finding out if the things that you're going for are all aligning with what your ultimate goal is. And you know how they say you can have a long-term goal, but it's better to start with small or short-term goals and accomplish those along the way, and hopefully those can hop you to your roadmap, right, where eventually where you want. And then there's bullet journaling. Again, I'm not super crafty. I was trying to throw an S in there. In that sense, like as far as like lettering and doing all of that. But I do like the concept of it. Again, I think it ties in a little bit of the vision board idea,
Yeah.
also on the written version of it. And also, like, I've read so much on how like coloring and getting artsy and stuff actually helps with brainstorming, right? Because it's allowing your artistic side of your brain to be able to work while you have that logical side of your brain. So it kind of
Yeah.
combines your left and right, that you're not putting so much pressure on thinking logically, you're allowing yourself to like be creative. And then sometimes it leads you to great ideas, right? So
Hmm.
that's another option or way. This next one, I threw it in there because personal experience I think works best. I put in here talking sessions. um Maybe it doesn't necessarily always work for guys, because I know guys are a little different. They have less words, I guess, than women, or than me. But found it that, again, we talked about, also we had talked about friendships, but find somebody that will motivate you, or will be that good balance of being
Hmm.
realistic, but also being encouraging. Sometimes what you need is a little push, or actually sometimes all it is, you need to hear yourself say it out loud. Like, I
Yeah.
think sometimes it gets so stuck, the ideas, and just like it goes in circles. But the moment you say it out loud, sometimes when you hear it, then you realize, like, that is super ridiculous. What was I thinking? Or you almost kind of get the ball rolling and
Yeah.
realize that's not as crazy as I was imagining it to be. This is actually pretty cool. And then last but not least, is research, research, research.
Mm.
Just do your research, honestly. And I know it gets overwhelming. Do it a little bit at a time. But the more you know, the more you reach out to people who know, um, just helps you get a better grasp. Now, I would say that doing research can be a little intimidating, right? Especially
Yeah.
if you know what you're going into, and you look up like very general like statements, for example, how to start a business. Well, I mean, that can be overwhelming. Um,
Yeah.
but you start small. Again, sometimes if you even start with those SMART goals, with what I was starting with, um, and just kind of figure out like what kind of business. And as you kind of come down and funnel it down, then your research gets more refined, and it helps you kind of guide you in the right direction. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I kind of went through it really quickly through my list, but I mean, feel free to jump in and anything you've personally done that's helped, or
Um, a lot of it for me is kind of like I don't write much of my like goals and stuff down, like my big long term ones, just because I don't know why, it's just a weird thing I do, but I keep it locked in my head. And
Mhm.
so like one of the smaller goals for me this week was to eat breakfast every day, which is what we talked about, right? And so I've done that,
Yay!
which is nice. I thought I was like, I should probably tell Marilyn, like, I did it. But that was my goal for that, like, this past week, because I don't ever eat breakfast.
Mhm.
And so I actually did that this week, and then I'm trying to get in another, like, a second week, and hopefully it's a recurring thing.
Yeah.
But like one of my bigger goals, which kind of goes in with like your research and stuff, was kind of, I knew I wanted to get a master's after college, and it's been 2 years since I graduated. So I'm kind of a little late to the game, but a lot of it is kind of just figuring out like what I wanted to do,
Mhm.
and then finding master's programs, and then finding master programs like that are affordable that I can go to, and then just kind of narrowing it down and seeing what steps I could take to get there,
Right.
and then like figuring out what my larger goals are also will be. So like I like the idea of starting out big, like what's your main thing, then
Mhm.
funnel it down, and then funnel it down, and then do your research for each of those steps.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
No, and again, like, I think 9 times out of 10 you will start. I mean, again, if you've just known what you've wanted your entire life, like, that's great.
Good for you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not like making it seem like, oh, like that's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. But again, like I said, sometimes you get to a point where you did think you knew what you wanted, right? And then things change, and then suddenly it's almost like, okay, so now what? Me. So so this is why, I felt it was relevant to also bring up and kind of just it does start like that. And again,
Mhm.
I'm not just saying it. I'm definitely like, this week is going to kind of like you with I'm going to start with my goal, like do what I said for my, on my podcast. Right.
Yeah.
And that'll be kind of like my little homework every day, just kind of, again, like starting big, right? Just kind of
Mhm.
start somewhere and then slowly allow it to come down. Again, probably what I'll do is I'll write down the goal and just kind of put it up. And again, sometimes starting some things seem a little scary because they feel like the train has passed, right? So when I
Yeah.
got something you said, you mentioned, well, it's been 2 years, so I'm a little late. So technically you're
Yeah.
not late, right?
I'm not.
But if you put it into comparison of what would be expected,
Mhm.
but again, like there's a reason why it was a 2-year delay,
Yeah.
that imagine jumping on that train and then realizing halfway through, like, oh no,
I don't want to do this. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Which
No, yeah.
puts me in that situation where I'm also not trying to rush it. I'm also
Mhm.
it's a little hard, and this is something I've actually been reading a lot of devotionals on. This is it is hard to be on the waiting period, right? Because you
Mhm.
want to feel like you're not just like laying on the couch and just like waiting. You want
Yeah.
to be actively doing your part. But being in the waiting period is a little difficult because you also have to realize it's far beyond like where you see,
Mhm.
your little bubble or where you're at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I also think it's weird because you were like so used to being so active and going after everything and not like waiting for things to come to us.
Hmm.
But because there's like this quote from Abraham Lincoln where it's like, don't wait for something, like the good man goes after or something. I don't remember. I'm quoting it terribly, but like that's what I had always lived by. I was like, yeah, I can't wait for everything. I had to go after it, right? And so I'm like, well, sometimes it's okay to just relax and
Hmm.
wait and see what's going to happen before you rush into a decision and ultimately hate it at the
Right.
end. Yeah, which is what you're doing, which is good. You're taking your time and not rushing into something and then being like, I hate this job.
Well, some days I want to rush it. Some days I see just a posting and I'm like, okay, I'll do it. But
Yeah.
but again, like then it's like through that cycle of, okay, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna go for it. Doesn't matter, But it's kind of when, okay, this is the best comparison that I can give you because this is exactly how it feels. It's kind of like when you kind of throw your earphones and they get all tangled up. So right now, I think the phase in my life where I'm at is where I have the headphones laying in front of me and I just have to patiently untangle them.
Yeah.
But it's a bit at a time. So I know throughout this whole process, like, I've slowly been unknotting some knots. Um, but I'm not quite there yet to where it's like straightened out and like, oh, voila,
Yeah.
here is the finished product. And so that's why I said in the very beginning, like sometimes you go through a different path and it teaches you different lessons to
Mhm.
ultimately lead you something different, right? But to really get a grasp of it, sometimes you just have to dig a little deeper and find who you are. And
Mhm.
again, you're going to change over your time span, right? And so sometimes this is why people who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s even, like, find a different interest in something different. But it's because, like,
Yeah.
what you've lived through and who you are at that point is so completely different than who you were as a 17-year-old, right?
Yeah.
Again, it's not bringing down the 17-year-old, is just different. And so because that is, you have to kind of dig a little deeper and realize, like, I'm in this phase in my life. What does that
Mhm.
mean for me? What are my priorities? What are my
Yeah.
dislikes?
And
So
not only that, you like once you grow older, you have the chance to look back and be like, hey, there's a reason that didn't happen, or there's a reason why I took that, or there's a reason why I've like, or there's this thing that I've kind of noticed has been consistent within my life, but I've just ignored it because I've been doing something else, right?
right.
And so
Mhm.
you can like look back and go, oh, why didn't I look at that before? And so it's time, while it can also be like a very annoying thing, it's also a very good thing because it gives you the chance to reflect on stuff.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
this is really crazy, but we talked about it. Oh, the episode just went out today, but the TV show we were talking about, The Office, right? And at the very end, you know how Andy says,
Oh,
like, I wish there was a time that you knew that you were living like in the good days or something like that. I didn't quite,
yeah.
but every time I watch that episode, I always look at it, I'm like, that is so true. It's so true. Sometimes you don't realize you're living like in your best moments until you move on to the next thing. You look back, you're like, wow, that was a great moment, And
Yeah.
of course, it's the hope is it gets better and better, right? Something different, something new. But I think, again, like, that's what the struggle is. Sometimes we have this expectation that we're moving forward, and we're always focusing on the next thing, that sometimes it's hard to be present. It's hard to really
Yeah.
embrace where we're at now. And I think that is why I'm choosing to be a little picky, is because my fear is that I'm going to be so fixated onto the next, that if I jump to it, right, and let's say it is something next, then I'm
Mhm.
gonna look back and be like, oh wow, I almost like missed out on, you know, whatever, when I look back, whatever it was I missed out on,
Yeah.
And so that's part of the reason why, like, I'm trying to be a little bit more kind of like, I'm trying to learn my lesson, on what high school and then college and then now post college, and just kind of being able to embrace where I'm at, be present where I'm
Mhm.
at with the people around me. Because again, like we talked about, even friendships, sometimes they come and go. And so just being able to establish that and enjoy it, so that moving forward, if they don't move forward with you, you don't feel like you didn't fully like appreciate it or fully take
Yeah.
advantage of that. So it's, life lessons.
Mm,
Really, truly.
very
But
true.
yeah, that is again, I'm making this as a public, like, accountability for myself to do that. And then also, hopefully, again, if you find yourself in a limbo too, or maybe you're almost there, like you have it figured out, like maybe one of these brainstorming or type of things is all you need, just to kind of like push you over.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just a little nudge.
Yep, exactly. A nudge in the right direction.
Yes.
There we go.
More like a push, but
That's true. But with that, I think we can close off. I just saw one of those little ants again, so it's going to drive me nuts. So we can conclude this one. And I honestly, like, wish everyone who's listening to this the best, and hope you get to a place where that you're looking forward to. But again, don't
Mhm.
forget to embrace where you're at, right?
Yeah.
So
Very true.
power to you. Bye, guys.
Bye.